Brian Powell of Vibe Run Far here with Jason Schlarb before the 2016 Hardrock 100. How are you, Jason?
I'm doing great, Brian.
It's a beautiful day up here in Silverton, Colorado. 9 days out from Hardrock. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling really good.
You started off the season with Tarawera and Marathon des Sables, and frankly, they weren't up to your A standard. What was going on with those races?
Those races were, those are adventures and experiences. And, I kept my volume really low. And in addition to the Marathon des Sables and Tarawera, I skied Hardrock. And those three projects were kind of just what I was doing during the winter.
Gotcha.
And, Marathon des Sables, what an experience. Completely out of my element, flat, sandy, hot, self-supported. And then same thing with skiing for 4 days around Hardrock. It was a different kind of stimulus. And I kept my volume for running low and just kind of cruised through the winter and spring, staying fit, doing fun stuff like that.
So when did you start getting serious about training for Hardrock? I'm assuming this is your first major focus of the year.
May I was able to really start to get in some training, and I've gotten about 8 weeks of 80 some mile per week, kind of average somewhere between 19 to 25,000 feet vert. And just kind of nothing to kind of, brag about, but consistent and thorough all the way through, and really taking care of my body, doing a 50K, the Dirty 30, and just feeling good. And it paid off. That last 3 weeks of the 8 week block started to feel that kind of, like, wow. This 25 miler feels like nothing, and it feels like I feel fresh, I feel good, opposed to worn out like a regular, build up for training. And so that's really exciting for me, and I'm pumped and feeling good, and this is the focus.
Yeah,
Hardrock.
So your fitness is there, and you live in Durango, an hour south from Silverton here. So you've been on a lot of the course.
I have a weird outlook on running races. I try to avoid the course.
Yeah.
And not too many, I don't think too terribly people do that, but I have been up here training, running a lot of in the San Juans. I obviously got to ski it, so we got familiarity there. But for instance, this morning, just down the couple drainages away, I did Boulder Creek, Boulder Gulch, and but I've seen a lot of the course. I did handies. I did some stuff over Pole Creek with you.
Yeah, but you've been a lot of the terrain. I mean, not necessarily the same trail, but you're familiar with it. I mean, each trail system kind of has its own feel. So you've been on you kind of have a feel for the steepness and technicality and that sort of thing. Yeah,
I've been in the San Juans pretty much from mid to late May all the way until now, every week. So I just drove up from my house this morning to do this workout. So that's been kind of the approach, which was the approach last year before I ran Eiger. This is the best place, my favorite place to train. It's just nice to actually have a race here.
Yeah. Does it give you, I mean, you obviously have confidence in your fitness right now. Does it give you confidence in your racing ability at this, knowing that you are kind of familiar with the terrain?
Yes, yeah. I think so. Because, you look at UTMB and Hardrock, and statistically pretty similar, but the feel of the race and the kind of the devil in the details is pretty massive. And so I'm really trained specifically for this terrain this time. And my approach for what I did well at UTMB was to be there for a few months and really get good at that kind of angle, that kind of technical slope, and that altitude. So I can honestly say that I'm familiar, man. I know this. It's gonna be good. I'm really pumped, and it's good.
Now, does that? Obviously, that worked out very well for UTMB a couple years ago, coming in fourth, right? Now here, there's a much smaller field. It's 152 people as opposed to 2,300. Does your approach to the racing aspect of it change in such a small race?
I have intentions, and I would foresee myself being by myself quite a bit. Where in the first half of UTMB several years ago, I was running with Timmy, I was running with Hal, I was running with Mike Foote. The first almost for sure 80K, was completely with a pack, and understanding, like, not getting caught up to go too fast, pacing myself for the right kind of kind of pace for the day. That at Hardrock, I think, is a little bit more internal for most people. And that there's only 5 guys probably that are going to be at that level mixing it up front. So
you don't plan to keep contact with Killian and probably Xavier or whoever goes out there on the front.
I do a pretty good job in all of my races of starting out conservative. I don't think I can't recall a race that's longer than 50K that I've gone out and led that wasn't like just a real small race. I always start out conservative, and I prefer to pass and gain momentum. So that's always my strategy. So I stay within myself. I do a lot of heart rate training, and I've got really familiar with where I can go for my threshold for a really long time.
Now, will you wear a heart rate monitor in the race?
No.
But you kind of know that effort.
Yeah, I do. It's just annoying for me.
Especially for close to 24 hours, plus or minus.
Exactly, and it gets funky. There's another factor to be worrying about, and there's just so many to do. I take the heart rate off.
Yeah. Now, you're going to be alone a lot more in this race than any race you've been in. Does that mean you're going to have pacers later on for a little company, or are you going solo?
This is the first race I'll ever have a pacer, and so I'm excited for the potential of how that will affect the mental state for me of racing and not getting into any too dark of a place or down on myself. Maybe have somebody there to kind of keep me out of that mind space. But I'm also nervous. I usually run alone.
Yeah.
In a lot of my ultras, besides those really busy races like UTMB.
And in your training too.
Yeah, and so I can get a little impatient with different behavior. So Andy Wellman and Paul Hamilton are my 2 pacers. I know them both very well. Yeah. So I'm pretty confident that they won't piss me off.
Good luck, guys.
They're awesome guys. Yeah, they're awesome.
Now, speaking of Paul Hamilton, he was with you out on the Hardrock 100 ski tour.
Yes.
This winter. Who else was out there?
Scott Simmons, who's a multi-U.S. national ski-mo guy. Super badass.
And obviously Paul Hamilton's a pretty badass on skis as well. So
those 2 guys
how are you
amazing.
fitting in with all that? Because do you have as much of a background in ski-mo as say them?
I grew up skiing and
backcountry
skiing, and I went to school in Montana. But as far as racing, those guys are fast and fit, and they have a really specific training regimen. They ski all winter. I don't. I ski part-time. So those guys were a bit more fit than I was, but longevity and endurance, I was right there. But we also had a videographer who had to keep up too. Was probably the fittest ski videographer in the country is Noah Howe. So he kept up too. But it was a pain train, and I'm hoping that 3 15-hour days and 1 8-hour day, I can knock it out in 1 day with this. So I'm kind of looking forward. And we went the other direction. And
I mean, there's also the dynamic of the opposite of Hardrock is it's 4 people, I'm guessing for safety reasons, pretty much staying together all the time.
Correct. Yeah.
How is that? Is that a challenge?
Yeah, we had a few small disagreements on navigation because we didn't take any GPS.
Okay.
And we wanted to kind of do it just by map. But overall, considering how long we had to work really hard together and the risks that we were putting ourselves into, we came out as expected, lifelong friends.
Gotcha. Yeah. And speaking of navigation, the course is marked at Hardrock.
Yeah.
But sparsely so and intentionally.
Yeah.
Will you have any sort of backup navigation during the race, or?
I am considering having, I'm pretty familiar, especially during the day when I'm fresh, of the general direction. I don't think I'm going to screw up, so I don't plan on bringing anything. But when I pick up a pacer into the dark from KT's to Cunningham, is that right?
No.
Grouse.
From Grouse.
Grouse to Cunningham with Paul Hamilton. I'm going to have, he doesn't know this yet, but I'm going to have him carry a phone with one of those apps that has the course on it, so we can see exactly where we are, because
I did it last year, and I maybe whipped it out maybe 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And it was just nice to have, I'm off course by a little bit, I got to go to the right.
Yeah.
And it sort of saves the mental worry of
I know a lot of guys that have gotten off for a little while. I think Mike Foote last year might have gotten off.
It's pretty routine.
Yeah, and so I mean, you know, 10-15 minutes is just heartbreaking for me.
Yeah.
Even in a 20-some-hour race. So I'd really like that backup insurance, especially in the dark.
Nice. What are you looking forward to most during the run?
I like I said, I specifically have kind of avoided the course a lot this spring and in the summer. So putting it all together, you know, haven't been over to Ice Lakes when it's actually melted, and you know, running down Bear Creek and just the whole experience, and the fact that I've put in this much work, and this is honestly the race that I'm most excited about in the entire world. I mean, that almost makes me emotional.
Yeah.
Like, and so to actually go and do this and put it together, as long as I get around that loop, you know, regardless of the time, I'm going to be pretty pumped after.
It's funny, like you say that, like the emotional wave hits me. Like, then I look over at Arastra Gulch to our left, and you're just like, we get to run that.
Yep. Yeah.
It's pretty special.
Put this all together is that's special. To have that belt buckle, it's gonna be cool, man.
Now, you've had a lot of great success in ultras, but things can go and do go wrong at Hardrock. I mean, it's kind of just a statistical chance. You can limit that chance, but you know, if stuff goes wrong, is this a race where you could foresee yourself, you know, getting on the slow train and running 37 or 47 hours to get to the finish? You know, if things don't go well.
Yeah, you know, my first 100-mile race at Run Rabbit Run in 2012 or something like that, I got off course by 7 miles, and I was in second place behind somebody, I think Dave James, who ended up dropping. And you know, I was so, you know, I was there, and I felt great, and I was so pissed off, and I got off course, and I hadn't done the 100-mile thing. I came back, tried to catch up, and then just dropped. And the next day I saw Bossett, you know, and he was finishing just before the cutoff, you know, the next day in the afternoon, evening time, and I was like, I could have just finished this race. And from that point on, I kind of have the mindset that on a 100-miler, this is a focus race like this, unless it's injury, I'm going to get it done. And I can't think of any other example more so. I did it at Dial de Fou. I didn't have a great race there, and I laid down, tried to take naps, etc. I'm prepared to come in last. 48 hours, I'll get it done.
Gotcha. Well, success or not, best of luck out there, and enjoy the course.
All right, thanks, Brian.
And a bonus question. I'm used to seeing you running Ultra Paradigms.
Yeah.
That's not going to be the case on next Friday. What are you going to be sporting?
The Lone Peak 3 is now my favorite trail-specific shoe I've ever put on my foot. It's just got just enough cushion. It's got aggressive lugs, and it's got in some of the Lone Peaks before this, the uppers were a little bit sloppy. These are just secure and good, and so it's just right. I think for UTMB, I'll be back in the Paradigm because that's a little bit smoother.
Gotcha.
Terrain. But for Hardrock, I'm rocking the Lone Peaks first new shoe in several years for the race.
All right.
So yeah.